Okay, this has to be one of my favorite episodes that I get to release. It's a coaching over coffee session, and you are about to get some really deep coaching on the question, how do I stay in control so that I stop my binges? Oh my God, it's so good. So let's get into it. Welcome to the Live Unrestricted podcast, a show where you'll learn how to heal your relationship with food and your body so that you can focus your time and energy on more important things like your personal growth. I'm your host, Sabrina Magna, food freedom coach, and my mission is to help make your life happier and healthier without stress, overwhelm, or guilt about food. If you love the show, please do go out and share it. And if you're looking for support with your relationship with food, details about my programs are in the show notes. Thanks for spending time with me today. Now let's jump in. Hello. Thank you for pressing play, and you will not regret that you did. So if you know me, if you're new to the podcast, welcome. Thank you so much for pressing play and for being here and for being part of this community. But if you've been around for a while, you might know that one of my favorite things to do in the world is to coach women, because so many women, every time I do these coaching sessions, I am reminded that so many women are out there without the right tools and support to overcome their biggest food challenges. And that is the only reason why they are still stuck. And that all of you out there who are listening to this podcast, whether you're struggling with binge eating, emotional eating, obsessive food thoughts, guilt, shame, you are so much closer to food freedom than you think. And the only reason why it feels so out of your reach and so far away, or maybe you feel like it's so hard because you've tried everything out there and nothing has worked, the only reason why it feels out of your reach is simply because you have not been taught how to properly diagnose the reason why you are still in the same pattern, why you are still stuck where you are. And once you can properly diagnose it, then you will have so much clarity on what truly needs your attention, your focus. So in this coaching session, you will hear from an amazing woman in my community and listener, Jenna. She is so awesome for being open and vulnerable and willing to be coached. And I thank her so much because I get to bring this to you and I know that you will be able to relate to it. And her question was all around, how do I stay in control so that I can stop my binges? And I'll give a little bit more context once we get into the conversation. But if you feel like every day you wake up and you tell yourself today is going to be different, I'm not going to overeat, I'm going to stay good, today is the day. And then it's like, before you know it, it's the end of the day and you fall right back into that same pattern, even though you told yourself you wouldn't and you really made that decision that day that it would be different. And you're so frustrated because you keep falling back into that same cycle over and over and over again. This coaching session is going to open your eyes. It is going to give you such a new perspective. And I cannot wait to hear what your biggest breakthroughs were, because Jenna had so many. So please get ready to take some notes. Send me a DM on Instagram once you're done to tell me what your biggest insights were and how you will implement what you are learning from this coaching session into your life. So without further ado, let me play that session for you. All right, Jenna. Well, thank you so much for submitting your question. I'm really excited to be able to do a coaching over coffee session that I haven't done in a really long time. So let's start with, you had submitted a couple of questions and they were all so good. But I want to make sure that we can dive deeper into one of them and we'll see how many we can hit. But let's start with this question, and I'm going to kind of remind you what you submitted because that may have been a while ago.
Yes, for sure.
Your question was, how do I stay in control? I spend a lot of time in my car for work and struggle with staying away from takeout. I'll tell myself out loud, don't pull into that drive-through. Eat the food that you packed right beside you. You're doing so good. And then 2 minutes later, without a thought, I'm in the drive-through.
Right.
What a relatable situation that
Hmm.
I've been through, and that I know that a lot of other women are going to be able to relate as well. So let's unpack that a little bit. The first thing that I want to talk about is that we're actually asking ourselves the wrong question.
Mm.
So, one of the biggest thing that I talk about inside Food Freedom Academy is the importance of asking yourself the right questions. Because if you think about when you think of your brain as like this Google search engine that's always going to go to work to answer the question that you ask it, a lot of people are asking themselves questions like, why do I keep doing this? What's
Hmm.
wrong with me? Why do I keep losing control? And then your brain is going to go to work to answer that question because you're weak. You don't have discipline. You can't
Hmm.
do this. Do any of those thoughts ever cross your mind?
Yeah, all the time. The worst, I'm always saying like, what is wrong with me? Why do I want this so bad? But then in a split second, I'm doing the opposite that.
Yeah, that question, what is wrong with me? Imagine asking yourself that question every single day. And now your subconscious mind, you're now asking your subconscious mind to look for all of the things that are wrong with you on
Hmm.
a daily basis. Because that's really, you are deciding what the filter through which you see the world is. And so the questions you ask yourself act as that filter. And so when you ask yourself that question, what's wrong with me? Well, now you're actively going out of your way to find that failure, that thing that you didn't do right. At the end of the day, you're like, I wanted to get all of these things done. I only got 3 of them done. What's wrong with me? I can't do as much as I want to. And then
Hmm.
we kind of like at the end of the day, we go through all of the things that we feel we fell short on
Right.
instead of thinking about the things that we did right. Does that
Right.
kind of ring familiar for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I wanted to make sure that we highlight the fact that the questions you ask yourself are really going to help you determine if you get powerful, insightful answers that are going to make a difference in the future,
Hmm.
or if you just keep repeating the same pattern. Because when you ask yourself the question, how do I stay in control? What are some of the answers that come up for you?
I think about just, I in the morning before work, I'm packing a lunch. I'm making sure it's right next to me. And I'm saying to myself, as soon as I have that thought, I'm gonna look at my food and I'm gonna eat that instead. So just I guess preparation. And another thing that I use to try to stay in control is just like support from my girlfriend, my friends, my family. So they're always saying, if you have, call it food noise, if you have that food noise, just message me and say, hey, I'm having some food noise. And I do that. But then there's so many times where I'm thinking to myself, okay, stay in control, do the things that you're planning on doing to help yourself. And then, like I say, it's that split second where I don't understand how I go from, positive to
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, are you familiar with kind of the distinction between your conscious and your subconscious mind?
I guess I don't really tune into it or think about it a whole lot. No.
Yeah. So even just understanding that can remove some of that shame and that guilt and that self-blame that you hold because your conscious mind is that part of your mind that can think. It's that part of your mind that can plan and organize. It's that
Mhm.
part of your mind that sets those goals, sets those intentions, that willpower lives as
Mhm.
well, right? It's when you can make that decision to say, today's going to be different or
Right.
I'm going to push through this. But the thing about your conscious mind is that it only makes up 5% of your total mind.
Right.
And so now you're fighting 5% of your conscious mind with 95% of your subconscious mind.
Mm.
So 95% of your day, of your thoughts, of your actions are driven by your subconscious mind. This is where your emotions, your habits, your beliefs, this is where
Mhm.
your protective mechanisms lie. And so when you recognize that as humans, our brains and our bodies are wired for our survival.
Right.
And this can make such a big difference in understanding that, okay, nothing that I do, none of the food choices that I make or the behaviors that I have, they're not inherently negative. Even
Mm-hmm.
though we think it, we've been taught that it's a sign of weakness and that we're just not strong enough. When we can switch our perspective and ask ourselves, okay, knowing that everything that we do as humans, whether it's lashing out at a partner, or it's for me, it's I will pick at my hands when I'm anxious.
Mm-hmm.
Or for others, it's they will doom scroll for hours or binge watch TV for hours or overspend or drink and smoke and drugs. Like all of these things that we don't love that we do them for a reason.
Right.
Is this all making sense so far?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now we can look at whether it's emotional eating or it's going through the drive-through. We can look at those things from that lens of understanding, even though I don't love it, this is obviously serving a purpose. This
Mm-hmm.
is obviously doing something for me. It is serving me in some way, shape, or form. And my job is not to ask myself, how do I just push down that urge, right? Like imagine that you have a child that is crying for your attention. It's
Mm-hmm.
like it needs something from you. And instead of paying attention, you're like, go to a corner and don't exist. And I don't want to pay attention to you because you're a nuisance right now.
Right.
Imagine what would happen to that child.
Yeah.
It would feel so neglected. It would keep crying. It would develop a whole host of abandonment issues. It
Mm-hmm.
would feel like you're not there for them. And so every time we've been taught to like push down these urges and to just power through and be strong, and then we get confused as to why 5 years later the urges are still there.
Right.
We're not able to like willpower our way out of it because especially when it comes to food, food has the physical component, right? It's something that we need. It's something that
Mm-hmm.
our bodies need. It has the emotional component. We have comfort and soothing and all of these things that we connect to emotions. And then we also have the psychological component, which is we've been taught to see it as good or bad and guilty and all of these things that we've developed in our minds. And so to boil it down
Mm-hmm.
to just push harder, just double down and be better and think your way into it, you're still working only in that 5% of your conscious mind.
Right.
Is
You're
that
not going to
making
get
sense?
very far on that
You're not
5%.
going to get very far, right?
Yeah.
Because you've got 95% of your subconscious mind that's like begging for your attention. And
Mm-hmm.
so, of course, it feels like when you're quote unquote weak or tired or stressed, it's like, I can't do the willpower right now. Like those subconscious impulses are so much stronger that no matter how hard you try to think your way into a different decision, you get pulled to that drive through.
Mm-hmm.
So, is there any insights, any questions, anything that's coming up for you as we dive into this?
I really like that subconscious and conscious mind thing that it really kind of clicks in my head. And I guess my issue is that 95% of my subconscious that I'm working with, I have, I feel like so much damage to that. So it's like, how do I then start switching, my mindset? So when it comes to the drive-throughs, typically it's not just a little snack. I struggle with binge eating. And so it's a lot of money. It's a lot of
Mhm.
unhealthy food. And for me, it comes from a place of boredom and needing stimulation. And so I guess, well, that's one of probably many factors. But yeah, I guess it's just how am I switching that, all those negative things that my subconscious is kind of programmed right now to think, how am I going to switch that to something
Yeah.
positive?
Okay, so I love that you are able to already start noticing some of this is I need stimulation.
Hmm.
I want something exciting. I want something to look forward to, right?
Right.
And so now you're seeing that this is this emotional need in your subconscious that's like, I'm crying for this. I need this so much from you. And it has developed this program, this code, this software that when I need this, I know food is going to satisfy that. And
Hmm.
so you're used to doing that automatic pattern that your subconscious is going to take over. And that's why it feels like you can start the day off and be like, I'm going to be so good today.
Hmm.
And then by the end of the day, that code is coming online. And so
Right.
you know what to expect. So there's a few ways that we want to take a look at that. And of course, I will do my absolute best to deconstruct this as much as I can in a
Yeah.
45-minute session. I hope you can tell that this is what I love doing so much because when people can start understanding why they keep repeating the same patterns and
Hmm.
that no amount of like motivation or willpower is going to deconstruct that. And now you can get clarity. Okay, part of this might be stimulation, but I'm hearing other things that you're saying in your language that I'm like, ooh, there might be something here on the
Right.
psychological side, and there might be something here on the emotional side.
Yeah.
So it's really just about like peeling these layers of the onion to say, okay, I'm noticing that one of the reasons I'm doing this is because I'm needing stimulation. So now you have this understanding, this is a need that is currently being met with food, and how can I address that need in maybe different ways?
Hmm.
How can I explore different ways that we can start paying attention to that? But we want to dive deeper into some of the other things.
Right.
So you mentioned you mentioned binge eating. So if you were to tap into that part of you that feels this need to
Hmm.
binge and understanding that that part of you is doing something for you,
Right.
it's protecting you, it's serving you in the best way it knows how. And you were to ask that part of you, what is it doing for you? How is it serving you? What does it feel like it's protecting you from?
Hmm.
What kind of answers come up for you?
I think a lot of it is just quieting my head. So, when you're eating, and typically I'm putting a show on Netflix, a mindless show on Netflix while I mindlessly eat, I'm not thinking. I'm not thinking about the stressors or work or just anything, right? It's just quiet. And I don't think that sometimes I don't feel like my head is loud when I'm making that decision. I'm not like, oh my God, my head is so loud right now. I need to go quiet it down. Let's go get food. It just kind of happens. And then, yeah, I guess that's where my mind first goes, is just when I'm eating, I'm not thinking about anything. And I guess that's nice. It's
Yeah.
nice.
I had a student inside Food Freedom Academy who said the exact same thing. It's like it gives me this sense of silence, distraction. I have something else to focus on during that time.
Hmm.
So now, understanding that, is this the first time that it's really getting clear that that's its function, or have you thought about it before?
I've thought about it a little bits before. And I don't even know if that's 100% its only function, or if there's more that are deep down that I don't know. But yeah, I guess just kind of recently I'm like, that makes sense. That would be one of its big functions for sure.
Yeah. And that's another piece to understand is that there's going to be multiple different functions to it. One
Mhm.
of it might be quieting the mind. Another one might be getting out of your body when anxiety, stress, loneliness. I know for me, I used to be a huge emotional eater.
Mhm.
And what would happen is during the day, my day was so busy that I would just like be doing and like in constant distraction. So
Right.
by the end of the day, where things would kind of wind down, and then I'd have to feel the discomfort of loneliness or anxiety or stress, I had not learned how to sit with discomfort. And so it was like my brain had really learned the code discomfort means let's escape from it. And the only way I know how to do that is through food.
Right.
So do you think that that might be part of it too?
Yeah, I absolutely think so. Another big factor for me is I don't know if I mentioned it when I submitted my questions, but I was diagnosed with ADHD about 2 years ago. And so I'm medicated for that. It also helps with binge eating disorder. So a lot of the times I'll get it in my head that I want to eat today and I want to eat poorly today. So I'm not going to take my pill because it suppresses my appetite. So I'm going to choose not to treat what I want to be treated. And so that's a big factor as well is, it's like I set myself up for failure and then I'm asking, why am I failing? you know?
So have you ever asked yourself the question, why do I want to eat poorly today?
Honestly, no. you know, it's almost afterwards that I'm asking, why did I do that instead of before? Yeah.
You're not the only person I've coached, I've spoken to that we have these premeditated binges. Like,
Hmm.
oh, I know later,
Yeah,
wreck my stomach.
exactly. Yeah.
And I hope that one thing that's starting to come to light is the importance of getting curious,
Hmm.
right? And one of the biggest things that I don't think I talk about enough because it's a hard sell. It's a hard sell because when you really strip everything down, when you strip down all of the reasons we binge eat and we overeat and you get to the core, the real reason that keeps people stuck is that there is an inherent lack of worthiness.
Right.
Because when you have this like loving relationship with yourself, and I deserve to feel good, I deserve to have a good day, I
Hmm.
deserve to treat my body with love and respect. Well, then that decision of I want to eat poorly today, it doesn't come in because you're like, no, come on, my body is my friend.
Yeah.
She deserves to feel good. And so when we talk about this loving, caring relationship that we could have with our bodies, what comes up for you?
What would make like a loving relationship, you mean, with my body? Okay. I love to exercise. I love to eat nutritiously. Like, I'll go a couple days without a vegetable. I'll eat one. I'll be like, oh my God, I love these. Why haven't I touched these in 2 days? Um, and, I do therapy. Spend lots of time just doing what I love. And that's what makes me feel healthy in my body. Yeah. So what I'm struggling with, it doesn't fit in there because, yeah.
So on those days where you do think, I want to eat poorly today, if you were to ask yourself the question, why? What comes up for you?
That is such a good question. um, it's habit. I'm so used to when I'm alone, I'm going to do this, or when I have a couple-hour break in between my home care clients at work, then I'm going to do this. So maybe it's the habit that's coming up, or right now in my life, there's a lot of transitions happening. There's a lot of big changes and things going on. And I'm finding myself, wanting to have those premeditated binges, like you say, a lot more often. So emotional reasons. Yeah. I guess that's what comes up right away.
Okay. So we've got a lot of uncertainty, a lot of uncertainty that comes with transition. And
Hmm.
so when we're feeling uncertain, that is one of the scariest things for human beings. Like we would rather know a certain hell that's coming up than
Hmm.
an uncertain heaven. I feel
Right.
that all the time when I'm feeling uncertainty. I know that that is where I'm the most fearful. And
Hmm.
so when you can understand, I'm going to try not to go too deep into the nervous system because that is a whole different conversation. But
Yeah.
are you familiar with how your nervous system works?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So when you're feeling a sense of uncertainty or when you're going through a transition, no matter what, that's going to put some stress on your nervous system, right?
Right.
Because now you don't know where things are going, you can't expect it, and your nervous system is wired for your survival. And one of the best
Mhm.
ways to survive is to know what's coming up.
Yeah.
So when you are stressed, when you're tired, when you're anxious, when you're feeling these really strong emotions for your nervous system, that is very dysregulating. It's
Mhm.
hard to be slow and connected and grounded and present in those moments. And so when our nervous system is dysregulated, one of the best ways that I like to describe it, because I know everyone can relate to that, is when you're like having a really good day and then you get this like text that or this email that you really did not were not expecting, were not in the mood
Mhm.
for. And you go from feeling fine in your body to feeling like there's like a slingshot that went through
Yeah.
your entire body. This very physical sensation. And most people, especially if you've learned to turn to food when you feel that, maybe you grew up with a mom or a dad that also used food as a way to
Right.
cope with emotions. Of course, you learned, okay, you feel this way, you turn to food.
Mhm.
So the more you experience that on a daily basis, the more you're going to turn to food in order to not have to really sit with that.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I grew up with food being, food should be enjoyed, but I feel like I was taught that food is more about enjoyment than nourishment instead of the opposite.
Mm.
So, there's another reason. Oh, I want something fun and exciting. So why
Mhm.
eat a salad?
Yeah.
That was kind of ingrained into my brain a lot.
hmm
Yeah.
And that was going to be my other question too. You mentioned at the end of the day, I want stimulation, I want something
Mhm.
fun, I want something exciting. So I wanted to ask you, do you feel like you enjoy the food that you eat the rest of the day?
I guess sometimes yes, sometimes no. It's hard to explain. I want to say yes, like I am enjoying my food, but a lot of the time, if I'm having one of those bingy kind of days, there's nothing else that I'm eating other than those things that I know are giving me that excitement and relief. And yeah.
Of course, that's going to be this one thing that if you've got this enjoyment basket, right? The
Mhm.
basket of satisfaction that's empty. Well, you're going to want to fill that.
Yeah.
You're going to want to fill it quick. So, of course, you're turning to food.
Hmm.
So, we've gone in so many different directions. And the biggest thing that I want to make clear for you is that this is actually so much simpler to stop than you think.
I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. Because let me ask you, Jenna, how long have you been struggling with this for?
Ever since I was a kid, ever since I can remember.
And what are some of the things that you have tried to stop it?
A lot of yo-yo diets. And I've done Weight Watchers, I've done keto, I've done low carb, I've all of those diets, and you take it off and you put it back on. So I have found that eating low carb, not keto, but eating low carb makes me and my body feel the best. And so I always kind of try to go back to that. But even then, I'm finding myself it's all the carb heavy foods that I'm binging on. So then I ask myself, is that
Mm,
really the best for me? So
yeah.
yeah,
See, I love talking to people like you because the only problem is that you've never been taught how to actually fix this.
right.
No, and that's what really pisses me off. That's
Mm,
what bothers me is how many women are out there still blaming themselves, still stuck in this cycle where it's like, if you just knew, if you could just unpack this the right way, like you could be done with this in weeks,
right.
right? So let's try to structure this in the best way, kind of rapid fire than I can. So
Okay.
when I'm working with clients, there are four different areas that I look at, and that's the four pillars of my process. So the first piece that I'm always going to look at is the physical piece. And so that is if you're binging, if you're overeating, emotionally eating, thinking about food all day long, I always want to look at first, okay, is there anything in regards to maybe you're not eating enough during the day?
Hmm.
Maybe you're not eating enough carbs during the day. Maybe you're not getting enough satisfaction from your meal. What I used to do is I would eat quote unquote clean bird food all week
Hmm.
long. And then by Friday night, I was like, I cannot wait to enjoy my meal.
Right.
I cannot wait to eat something that I actually look forward to. And so I would order takeout. And then, of course, I would binge because I had created so much deprivation from the week, not necessarily from not eating enough, although I was not eating enough, but
Hmm.
also people underestimate how important it is to feel satisfied
Right.
when you're eating. And I even feel that too now when I meal prep something and it ends up not being good. You know, when you meal prep,
Uh-huh.
after 2 days, you're like, oh, I still have 3 days of this to eat it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
My Friday night rolls around. I'm like, Luke, we have to order takeout. I need to eat something that I'm excited about.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So the first piece is I always look at physical. So you want to ask yourself, okay, on those days where I'm thinking about food all day long, on those days where I'm binge eating, am I actually giving my body enough food, enough carbs? Am I enjoying the foods that I'm eating enough? So if I were to ask you that question, what comes up for you?
No, no, and no. Honestly, yeah, I'm not eating enough. And typically when I say that I'm on track or I'm having a good day, I'm trying to keep the carbs quite low because I've am in this mindset of if I can't just have a little bit because it makes me want more, more, more. So that's why I'm like, maybe I should try to stay away. So
Mhm.
no, I'm definitely not eating enough carbs to sustain my energy for sure.
Okay. And I just want a little asterisk, a little aside there. Have you noticed that it's actually the mindset of I can't even have a little bit because if I have some, I'm just going to eat more and more and more. That is perpetuating this cycle of you overeating that carb later.
Yeah. We always want what we can't have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'll tell you a story of my boyfriend Luke. When we started dating, didn't have the greatest relationship with food. And I would see him like come home with a bag of candy, 2 bags of candy at the end of the day, and like crush those 2 bags of candy. And so I had to be a very patient girlfriend and give him his space to kind of figure things out on his own. But
Mhm.
eventually he asked me to help him. And so what I recommended is that he actually allowed himself to eat candy more often, to like sprinkle it throughout his day. And it was so funny because within a few weeks, he was like, I don't even have the urge to bring home candy at the end of the day
Yeah.
because it's not on this pedestal, this food that's so special or bad for me. And it's just this thing that I can
Mhm.
have whenever I want. And so I know that it's really scary, especially when you're trying to figure this out all by yourself, to think about eating more carbs because you're so scared that you're going to lose control, right?
Right.
But
Right.
then you have to ask yourself, am I actually feeling in control right now?
Hmm. No. No, there's not a whole lot of feeling of control either way
Yeah.
currently. Yeah.
A lot of people, they'll come to me and they're in that like restriction or dieting and they want to have freedom with food, and they're really scared that if they stop doing all of that and then they try becoming an intuitive eater and healing the relationship with food, that they'll lose control. And I find that it's so interesting because when you really ask yourself, well, do you currently feel in control?
Mm,
Because you came to me because you feel out of control.
right.
And so the things that you're doing right now, they're not making you feel in control. And so
Hmm.
to keep repeating the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, that is insanity.
It is absolutely.
So we've
Right.
got that first piece, which already we're understanding. We're not eating enough. We're not eating enough carbs, and we're not getting enough satisfaction from food. So of course the binge is happening. Even it would happen to me if I don't eat enough during the day. I'm going to be ravenous by the end of the day. It's
Right.
just no matter if you have a good or unhealthy relationship with food, that will happen.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing that we want to do is we want to fix that because your body is wired for survival. And so no matter what, if I'm holding my breath underwater, no amount of willpower is going to stop me from coming up for air and gasping for air.
Right.
So we have to make sure before we can even focus on the emotional side, the psychological side, so those things that require a little bit of higher thinking,
Mm-hmm.
we need to make sure our body is getting what it needs. So that's the first piece. Now, the second piece that I look at is going to be the emotional piece. So this is where we're asking ourselves, okay, what function is food serving for you?
Mm-hmm.
So have you ever, I'll ask you this question. One of the things that I do with my clients inside the academy is we build an emotional toolbox. So
Right.
that is all of these different strategies to cope with and to navigate all these different emotions that we feel. So if I were to ask you about your emotional toolbox and on those times where you turn to food, what are some of the different options that you have that you turn to?
To steer away from those binges, do you mean?
I don't even want to say to steer away because once you have that ability to emotionally regulate, you don't even have the urge to turn to food.
Right. Right. Okay. So yeah, what's in my toolbox to help
Yeah,
prevent that? Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure I understood your question. My toolbox is pretty sparse right now.
that's okay.
Honestly, yeah.
I love hearing that because I'm like, beautiful. So we just shine some light on something else that needs your attention.
Right.
The point where I would be concerned is if I ask someone all of these questions and they're like, I'm eating enough, I'm eating enough carbs, I love the food that I'm eating, I have all of these tools to regulate my emotions, I have a healthy
Mhm.
relationship with food and I'm still binging. And I'd be like, well, now we have to have a different conversations.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I think one tool though that I really like and just recently have been starting to use is just vocalizing the fact that I'm thinking about it is like it's almost taking that weight and off of me. And a lot of the times it does help if I decide to use it. It's in my box, but it doesn't come out as much as it should. Um, but yeah, just messaging someone in my life and saying, I'm thinking about a burger right now. I'm thinking about an ice cream right now. Even just vocalizing it, it just kind of takes away that pressure.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think that's so beautiful. And that's really useful to manage the symptoms, right? But when you remember that food is just a symptom, then we want to address the root cause of it.
Hmm.
And so when it comes to your nervous system, being able to tend to your nervous system to make sure that you are not going into fight or flight or freeze, to make sure that when you do go into fight or flight or freeze, that you tend to that piece of you that needs to feel safe. Because at the end of the day, it's all about feeling safe. And
Right.
most people turn to food because there's a feeling, I feel in danger, I feel unsafe, I don't feel good in my body right now, and I want to escape it. And so
Hmm.
we live permanently in our head instead of living in our bodies. But the more you disconnect from your body, the more now food becomes this like crutch that you are very, very dependent on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
So that second piece that I look at is the emotional piece. And it's one that is a lot deeper than just recognizing, okay, eat when I'm bored, I'm eat when I'm lonely. Maybe I need to distract myself or call a friend. We have to go even deeper to see where is that coming from.
Hmm.
So that's the second piece that I look at. The third piece that I look at is the psychological, the mental side of things. And so if someone's like, I'm eating enough, I don't think it's emotional, although usually it's at least a little emotional.
Yeah.
But if someone's like, I don't think it's emotional, then I look at, well, what are you telling yourself? What are you telling yourself while you're eating, before you're eating, after you're eating? What is your perspective on the binge, on the food? And so if I were to ask you, what are some of those thoughts that run through your
Mm.
mind? What are they?
I don't have a lot of thoughts as I'm eating. Sometimes I will be like, I feel uncomfortable. I feel full. Like, let's stop. And I don't. Afterwards, the thoughts are negative, and my mind is so focused on how am I going to hide this? How am I going to, get away from having to think about it or talk about it later? And how do I avoid it? So it's all kind of those thoughts afterwards. And before, it's just all of those thoughts of here's all the reasons why I'm going to justify doing this. And now I'm going to go do it. Or the other hand is there's no thoughts and it's just so impulsive that I don't even realize I'm doing it until I'm paying through the window, right? So, yeah.
And when you're done the binge, is there this mindset of, okay, that happened, beating yourself up over it, and then tomorrow I'm going to be better?
Absolutely. Every time.
Yeah,
Every time. Yeah.
tomorrow I'm going to be better. And
Yeah.
then is there a part of you that has stopped even believing that?
For sure. I think I go through phases. Sometimes I'm like really, I'm gonna hype myself up and I really believe that this is it and I'm gonna do it. And then there's other times, yeah, it'll be weeks at a time where I'm like, I almost stop trying until I just get to a point of, getting caught in a lie or running out of money. It's always something so rock bottom before I'm like, okay, let's switch it back up. Let's
Mm.
actually, put some effort into this. And I feel like I've always struggled with anything. This is probably out in left field and, but and anything that takes a lot of effort, it's almost like I struggle to put it in and then it's like a woe is me kind of thing. So a lot of the time I'm like, Jenna, just try. But for some reason there's that mental block of getting there. So
Yeah.
yeah. It's a whole lot of stuff going on up there.
And you are so not alone.
Yeah.
Why do we think that it's so much easier to jump on the next diet, the next diet, the next diet, instead of, I think that's what makes my job hard, is that at the end of the day, I think everyone knows I need to slow down and I need to look at this stuff.
Right.
I need to figure this out. I need to dig deeper. I think subconsciously we all know that that's what it takes,
Hmm.
but we think it's going to be so hard and so uncomfortable and require so much that we would rather just be stuck in this hamster wheel for
Hmm.
decades than take the time. And that's why I said it's so much simpler than you think, because when you do this the right way, within weeks, I could
Right.
be hearing these amazing breakthroughs that you're having.
Right.
Doesn't need to be painful,
Mhm.
because truly, I look at the process of healing your relationship with food in the same way as like you get to truly know yourself.
Right.
And what is the resistance that you have to getting to truly know yourself?
I don't know. I think I focus so much on everything and everyone else but myself. So then it's like, oh, there's not enough time or there's not enough resources. Or I'm a kind of person that I'm like, I want to be told what to do step by step and I'll do it because figuring it out myself seems like it's a lot.
Mhm.
So yeah, it kind of keeps me from getting to know myself for sure.
Yeah. There's not enough time, but we will spend decades, right?
Right.
It,
Yeah.
it's all of these stories that we create as to why we can't do it. I don't have enough time. Other people are more important. They're all these protection mechanisms that create a wall between you and who you really are. And there is some reason that there is something protecting you from getting to know who you really are.
Right.
And we, most of the time, are scared of what we're going to find.
Mm-hmm.
I've been ignoring, I've been distracting, I've been pushing down for so long. I know that there are some things that I'm pushing down that I don't want to really look at
Right.
because that might be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Is there any of that coming up for you?
Yeah, I think so for sure. Like, because you don't think about those things. You don't think about really what's deep down. You're just on a day by day getting through it. To stop and really think. And like you say, get to know myself. I think that would make a huge difference for sure. Yeah.
And let me ask you, Jenna, is it working for you to just get by day, disconnected from who you really are?
No, no, it's not. It's something that I'm always thinking about is when am I finally gonna take the time and do that and really work on myself because it's exhausting. It's exhausting going through all of these issues with the food and all that emotional stuff and not ever doing anything about it. So yeah,
Mhm.
it's not working.
And when is enough going to be enough? What is going to be that rock bottom that is so bad that you are forced to change? And do you even want to wait until that is where you are forced to change?
you know, I can see rock bottom being, losing people that are really important to me because my habits and the way of doing things don't just affect me, they affect my family, my partner, and that I see as being a total rock bottom. And the thought of waiting for that to happen it makes no sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I don't want to wait till rock bottom. So, and I'm so happy that we were able to meet and talk because it's really given me another perspective to think about for sure.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
And I really do I want people to take that time to sit down and ask themselves the real question of like, how much longer am I willing to keep doing this? Right?
Mhm.
We get so caught up in being uncomfortable in our own misery that we just think this is just my normal. But
Right.
you seem young, you have a lot of life in front of you. No
Mhm.
matter if you're 50 years old, you still have a lot of life in front of you. I had a
Absolutely.
client who was 72 years old and she
Oh,
was like restarting her life at 72.
good
And
for her. That's
I
great.
know,
I love
I know, she's
that.
awesome. She's awesome.
Yeah.
But it's really deciding like, okay, yeah, there might be a little work that goes into it, right? I might have to go through a few weeks, a few months of deconstructing a lot and getting to know myself. But that is the definition of short-term discomfort for
Mhm.
long-term gain.
Yeah, absolutely.
And oh my goodness, how would your life change if you no longer had to deal with this? If this was this weight off your shoulders where food no longer had power over you, how would things be different for you?
I would have so much space in my head, just to enjoy and to be able to go to functions or even, like I say, just go to work and just have energy and not to be so concerned about carbs and sugar and just you know my life would change because I would just I like I say I would just have so much space in my head. And
Yeah.
know to not feel shame or to feel like you have to try so hard to hide and lie and just so much negativity that for some reason I just stay in this hamster ball and it's like when you really talk it out it's what are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah. When you
Yeah,
take the time to talk it out, you're like, oh my goodness. Yeah, I want something to change.
absolutely. Yeah.
So I want to make sure for anyone who's listening, they're like, what's the fourth piece to ask? Because you didn't mention it. So
Yeah.
at this point, we've looked at the three main ingredients. And then the last one, which is very, very, very rarely isolated, is the habitual side, which is the mindless eating, the disconnecting, the distraction. You're kind of always multitasking and doing something at the same time. So that one is common for most people, but it usually goes hand in hand with something else. So
Right.
I would love to know, Jenna. We went a little over. I'm sorry. Are you
No, that's totally my fault. I'm a rambler.
not? No, my goodness. No, I love talking to people like you because you are self-aware and you are willing to answer these questions and go to that part that's a little bit uncomfortable and vulnerable. And what are some of the biggest breakthroughs or insights that you just got from today?
Subconscious and conscious mind. To put those numbers at 5 and 95% just like really just stuck.
Mm.
And yeah, I'm really going to pay more attention to that subconscious mind for sure. And the getting to know myself part as well. You don't really think about that. You're looking for answers on food, but there's so much more to that. And I think I really took away from getting to know myself and really digging deep. And yeah, for sure. Definitely a
Asking
lot of good
yourself
information.
questions,
Yeah.
right? We went from the first question, which is, how do I stay in control? And oh my goodness, did we end up somewhere completely different?
Absolutely. Yeah. And to take away that when you mention control, the fact that I'm not in control to begin with. So my question of how do I stay in control, I think it really just came around to how do I get in control instead?
Yeah.
And I think the answer to that is, just not what I expected. And so, yeah, I'm going to take away from a lot of that and really give it a lot of thought
Yeah.
for
And
sure.
and it's so interesting because really the actual question is, why do I keep losing control?
Mm,
Right? It's not even how do I get in control? It's but why am I losing control?
right.
And that then you get to start digging deeper and you get to start asking yourself the right questions.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Well,
so cool.
Jenna, thank you so much for being so open and vulnerable. I know that so many people listening are going to be able to resonate with your story, your challenges,
Mhm.
and like you might not know it, but you will help so many people out there for being willing to do this.
Oh, thank you so much. And you help so many people too, including me. So I really, really appreciate it.
Okay, so how awesome is Jenna? Let's all thank her for being willing to open her heart and go deep. And I just had so much fun in this coaching session. And I hope that you got a lot of value out of it too. So, if you wanted to learn more about how you can dig deeper and learn more about yourself, understand your binges, emotional eating, get to know your body, your emotions, your mind, so that you can stop this hamster wheel and not spend the next decades of your life doing the same thing over and over again without getting any further and even getting further away from the life that you want to create. I invite you to check out the Food Freedom Academy 2.0, which is my program where this is what we do. It is really where we go to diagnose all of the different issues that you're having with food, whether it's food obsession, guilt, shame, compulsive relationship with exercise, body image, and we deconstruct it, we diagnose it so that you know what to actually focus on to make lasting changes in your life. So you can find all of the info on Food Freedom Academy in the show notes or at the link, sabrinamagnan.com/FFA. And thank you so much for listening. I'll see you on the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you found it valuable, I would love if you would share it with someone you know that could benefit. If you're loving the show, don't forget to subscribe over on Apple Podcasts so you don't miss a single episode. I really love hearing feedback from you, so please leave a rating and review over on Apple to help us get in the ears of more people who need it the most. Finally, come hang out with me on Instagram at Sabrina Magnan Health for more educational content and get up close and personal with me. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you on the next episode.